Hey everyone, this is Dr. Israb with Integrative Kidney Solutions, and today we're going to be talking to Lara Zakaria, the foodie pharmacist, about the gut-kidney connection. This is our first Instagram video live that we're going to be doing, and hopefully it will be a series of interviews. So you probably know me. My name is Dr. Israb, and I'm a nephrologist practicing for more than 15 years. And I would like to welcome Lara to our first here, and hopefully that will be a success, and we'll be doing more of these in the near future. Hi, Lara. How are you?
Hi, how are you, Dr. Israb?
Good, good, good. So, Lara, we're both new to this, and hopefully this will work.
Yeah, this is the first time we're doing a simultaneous live, so this should be fun.
So yeah, and this is exclusive on Instagram, so hopefully it will be a success. I would like to give our viewers a chance for you to introduce yourself to our viewers. So please go ahead and let us know about yourself. Yeah.
Well, first of all, my name is Lara Zakaria. I am a pharmacist and a nutritionist. I'm based actually on the East Coast. I'm in New York City right now. And my background is, like I said, in pharmacy. And I got into functional medicine about like 10 years ago when I wanted to learn a little bit more about how to address questions I had about my own health. And I fell down the functional medicine rabbit hole and went back, got a master's in nutrition, and now I focus on integrative medicine, and I combine both my background in pharmacy and in nutrition to address chronic disease.
Great, great. And we got to know each other during medical missions to help the Syrian refugees in Jordan, and we've been friends since then. So it was great to have you here today. And you've been really a great support for Integrative Kidney Solution and a regular contributor to our blog. So thank you so much for doing that.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah. So today we're going to be really talking about the gut-kidney connection. And you and I have wrote quite a few blogs about this. So I want to talk to you about it. And you had a lot of experience in this. So hopefully you can tell us a little bit about it. And I want to start with asking you a question. Why our gut is so important?
Wow, what a good question and a hard one to start off with. Well, basically our gut is the foundation for pretty much everything. From being able to adequately absorb our nutrients from our food, and all those nutrients then are involved in everything, every process that our body does. So obviously we need energy from the fat and the protein and the carbohydrates, but we also need all those vitamins and minerals because they power a lot of the cell functions that happen every single day. Everything that you're doing, from being able to lift my arm up to being able to talk and say the sentences I'm saying, all has to do with being able to absorb all those nutrients properly. In addition to that, the gut bacteria that actually lives in our digestive tract, for years we used to think that it was just bacteria that was in there, and maybe it regulated a few processes. And we're learning more and more that gut bacteria, the amount of bacteria that you have, the diversity of the different kinds of bacteria that you have, all of that forms a big part of our ability to stay healthy, as well as not having the right amount will make us get sick. So when we're looking from a holistic perspective and we want to see what's happening in terms of chronic disease, whether it be kidney disease or cardiovascular disease or mental health or anything, it keeps coming back in the research to the kind of bacteria and the density of bacteria that you have in your gut. So those are the two main reasons that I think it's important to start looking at the way that the gut is functioning.
So this is a really great introduction, and I want to ask you, there's this term dysbiosis that we hear all the time when you talk about the gut-kidney axis, and I think a lot of people don't really understand what it means, and it will be helpful to let them know what is dysbiosis and how it implies to the gut-kidney axis and gut-kidney connection?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of my favorite words. I probably throw this word out like 100 times a day when I'm talking about health and talking about like especially gut health. So dysbiosis refers to the balance of your good bacteria to your bad bacteria or any potential overgrowth of any other little critters or bugs. So that would be yeast, or also known as candida, or parasites, or even viruses or bacteria. So essentially when we say dysbiosis, it's a very broad general term that we're talking about any kind of imbalance. So that could be either not having enough good, healthy gut bacteria, or it could be that you have an overgrowth of something that's not good for you, and that's potentially causing some sort of infection.
And how is that harmful to the gut itself? Like, you know, what does it do to the gut and our, you know, intactness of the gut, I should say.
Yeah,
I don't want to say that permeability.
Well, fair enough. So it's kind of twofold. It's almost like a catch-22. When you have dysbiosis and you have an imbalance of the good and the bad stuff in your gut, that's going to cause inflammation. So that's going to aggravate your immune system, and your immune system then is going to mount a response. I tell my patients when I'm trying to explain this that it's as if your body's going to war and the front line is in your gut. And so your immune system senses that there's something there, it's a foreign invader, it doesn't know what it is. And so it goes to the front line and it starts fighting, trying to protect you. Unfortunately, the kind of side effect of that battle is that you end up having collateral damage to your actual gut lining of your gut. And so what you normally would have a mucosal layer that covers your intestinal wall, and you would have cells that line your intestines, you end up having damage. And so it creates what we call intestinal permeability or leaky gut. So it ends up creating these gaps. And when you have these gaps, then it's much easier for things to sneak through and cause even more inflammation. And so now you have even more inflammation happening and even a bigger battle happening at that front line. And so it kind of perpetuates that cycle. Then on top of it, the more inflammation you have in that area, the more risk you have to having even more dysbiosis. So like I said, it's a catch-22. One kind of pushes the other, and unfortunately just gets worse and worse.
Right. And there's a lot of research written about this. I mean, there's actually research about the leaky gut permeability and kidney disease and inflammation, and there are a lot. There's something called urea retention molecules where you know, actually it's impressive that the gut has this intricate mechanism that can detect what bacteria are in there, and from that you can initiate a whole pathway of immune, you know, reaction that can lead to kidney disease. So it's really, when you go down the scientific pathway, it's really, really impressive things. And people, I mean, they will have dysbiosis and they probably have some minor, I mean, can you tell us about like what symptoms, you know, like a person with dysbiosis may have and may not know that they have dysbiosis, and all these other million issues that are happening to them?
Yeah, so this is a really good question, and also kind of a hard question to answer, because the symptoms can be anything from no symptoms to a lot of symptoms and a lot of unrelated symptoms. So first of all, you might have dysbiosis and a leaky gut and you might not really notice it. You might be either that it's kind of an underlying or low-grade thing that's happening and you're not symptomatic yet. Although a lot of people will end up getting some digestive symptoms. A lot of those symptoms will be changes in motility, so constipation or diarrhea. You might have changes in, for example, having more gas or bloating, especially after certain kinds of foods. You might notice a pattern that certain things you eat change the way that they feel or how they digest in your gut. And so all of those are kind of typical things we think about when we think about changes in our gut. However, What's more interesting is that because it's so interrelated, the communication between the gut bacteria and the inflammation in the gut starts to affect so many other parts of the body, you actually end up sometimes seeing other symptoms. Sometimes you'll get brain fog, where you just feel like you can't really concentrate as well. You keep forgetting where your keys are. You might notice changes in mood. There's actually some great data connecting depression and anxiety with dysbiosis and intestinal permeability in the gut. And then kind of more long-term chronic, rather than kind of immediately feeling it, are sudden changes in things like cardiovascular disease, insulin resistance that might lead to diabetes and or kidney disease. So those are kind of longer as you continue to kind of mount that inflammation, as you said, secrete some of these metabolites, and the inflammation just kind of keeps going. Eventually, it starts to affect other organ systems.
Great. So can you tell us, so really, this is really important, because some people may have dysbiosis and may not know, and they might think that this is the normal life. So can you tell us what kind of food, you feed the good bacteria or cause dysbiosis, or,
Okay, so let's start with, that's I'm going to take that question, I'm going to split it up a little bit.
All right, go for it.
All right, so first we're going to talk about what might cause dysbiosis. So first of all, not eating enough fiber and having too many processed foods, and particularly really high carbohydrate, high sugar foods, are probably, like, if I had to pick one thing, if I was only allowed to answer one thing, I would say that that's probably the biggest reason for having dysbiosis. However, in addition to that, you've got certain medications like antibiotics, for example, or use of a class of medication called PPI, or acid blockers in the gut. Anything that will change either the pH of the gut, so either it's going to make your stomach less acidic, and therefore it might make your body less able to fight an incoming infection, or anything that might alter the good bacteria and kill off the good bacteria, like an antibiotic, is going to change some of the balance in the gut. So oftentimes I'll ask my patients if they have had a history of frequent antibiotic use, especially like the broad spectrum antibiotics, because those tend to kill off a lot of different kinds of bacteria. I'll ask them if they've had a history of any acid blockers or any, anything like a PPI or an H2 blocker. I'll ask them if a history of steroid use or NSAID use. So NSAIDs are non-steroidal anti-inflammatory, so things like ibuprofen or aspirin, as well as steroids. So those are kind of the big guns, sort of say, that might alter gut permeability or might alter and cause dysbiosis. Another thing to think about is actually environmental factors, some of which we can control and some of which we can't. Fortunately or unfortunately, I guess, we do have exposure to antibiotics in our food sometimes. So a lot of our animals, for example, are fed antibiotics as part of their feed, and there has some research that shows that we actually do end up absorbing that. So maybe chronic exposure to that might be altering our gut biome. The big one, though, is actually pesticide exposure. And this is a conversation we don't really, I feel like, it doesn't get addressed as much as it should around the debate around GMO. And the whole reason that GMO comes is what it is, and it helps to have crops survive, is because it makes it changes basically the DNA structure of that crop so that it can kill off certain bacteria more easily. So it's resistant to certain bacteria. As part of that process, that can alter our gut microbiome. In addition to that, certain pesticides that are used, whether they be pesticides that you use for your lawn or pesticides that are in our food, those can also, obviously they're meant to kill bugs, so they can also kill the good bugs that we have in our gut. And in addition to that, you can have exposure to certain bad guys. So you might get a foodborne infection or an illness that causes you to have an overgrowth of something, something that's more problematic, like a bad bacteria or yeasts or a parasitic overgrowth. So those are all the reasons that you might get dysbiosis. How can you improve it? So number one, eating lots of fiber. fiber-rich foods, a lower carbohydrate diet, at the very least, removing any processed foods, any extra sources of sugar. I usually recommend getting off of things like pastas and breads and cereals and things like that, because those are going to be more processed and those are not going to typically be as high in fiber. You want to eat much more fiber-dense fruits, vegetables, and generally speaking, if you're looking at your plate, for example, you want most of it to be vegetables with a little bit of, protein and having a good source of anti-inflammatory fat, as well as maybe eating organic whenever possible. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, absolutely. and so from someone who's transitioning from conventional medicine to integrative medicine, really this is ringing a lot of bells. And a lot of those things, the medication you mentioned, we're learning more and more how they're bad for the kidneys. And some of them we knew that they're bad for the kidneys, but adding another mechanism of why they're causing kidney damage. And also, I mean, this is really what I'm, now there's a lot of data that's showing that going on a plant-based diet is very beneficial to slow down the progression of kidney disease. And what you just mentioned is like, just make sure that your plate has most of it is fruit and vegetables. And if you want to do, animal protein, make sure that they're grass-fed and they're organic, and be the small portion of your plate, not the whole, the big,
Absolutely.
Big side. Yeah. So I agree with you.
And I just want to also mention, because it is expensive, and I'm always being asked this question, like how do you afford to eat organic all the time? Grass-fed is so much more expensive than non-grass-fed. I just want to mention a great resource is finding the EWGs, our environmental working groups, Dirty Dozen, Clean 15. They have a list of the top 12 foods that you should absolutely avoid if they're not organic. And then the top 15 foods are totally okay to buy conventional. And that should help you to budget. And then the other side of it is, the animal protein. If you're going to have to pick which one you absolutely should always be organic on, I always say the animal protein is worth it. There's multiple reasons. I'm not going to get into all the different reasons, but there's multiple reasons why you want to try to favor that. And you can always remember, you don't need to have like this much protein, serving size makes a difference. You can often shop at a local farmer's market. A lot of times you can get really high quality animal products there, much cheaper than you would in the grocery store. So there's a few tricks and tips there that can help.
Thank you for mentioning that. And for our viewers, actually, I just want to mention that we have summarize the Dirty Dozen and the food that is safe to buy, not organic, in our stories. And you can find them on the highlights and the story highlights in our Instagram profile. So that would be good reference for you to, go and do your grocery shopping. Definitely the one that are on the Dirty Dozen, they have to be, organic right now. Well, this is great. So I'm going to ask you one last question. And now, PPI used to be the medication that everybody's taking. Now everybody's is hyped about probiotics should we all take probiotic supplements, or should kidney patients take probiotic supplements? What is your thought about that?
I have so many thoughts. So many thoughts. So you're right. There came a time that I feel like everybody was on a probiotic. Like everybody was saying, you need to be on a probiotic. There's a bazillion of them on the market that came all of a sudden. This one's better than that one. Everyone has to be on one. And I think our thinking around it has evolved. The absolute best way to affect the gut bacteria so that you could rebalance it and you can have good gut function still comes down to eating fiber-rich food that makes the absolute biggest difference, and eating traditionally fermented foods. So every single culture has some form of fermented food, whether it be sauerkraut or kimchi or pickles or kefir, kombucha. I cannot think of a single culture across the globe that doesn't have these traditionally fermented foods. And as it turns out, we evolved as humans eating bacteria as part of our daily meals because we needed that bacteria in order to help protect our gut. So that along with the fiber, which actually feeds the bacteria, the two thrive together, and that's what actually promotes gut health. So I think that is kind of like the golden nugget. Like you can't get away from that. That said, I definitely use probiotics, especially short term, a lot of times in higher doses when I'm in the middle of what we call a 5R gut protocol. So in the beginning, when we just discovered there is dysbiosis, there might be an overgrowth of something, I'm trying to address leaky gut, somebody might have small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, blah, 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 blah. In the very beginning, often I need to come in and actually just like sprinkle some seeds in there and get the probiotics in there so that they can help to start to crowd out and they start to go to the front line and they start to help the immune system to rebuild and to get rid of the bad guys. So I think there's a use and practice to have the false sense that we can just use them forever. I don't think it's practical, and I think long term we're going to find out it's not.
Yeah, I agree with you. Well, I want to really thank you so much. Thank you for our viewer for watching us, and thank you for the good turnout. Lara, thank you for taking the time to talk to me about the gut-kidney connection. For our viewers, you and I have written many blogs. You can find them on www.inkidney.com. And if you want to subscribe to our channel, our newsletter, and you can get updates on our new blogs and also on our YouTube channel at Integrative Kidney, and we're here on Instagram every day. So we welcome you. We welcome your comments. We're not making professional medical advice here, but there's a lot of data that we are going to be talking to you about, and welcome your contribution and support. Thank you so much, Lara, and we look forward to hearing from you again.
Thank you. This was really fun. Have a great day. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.